Thank you, Stephen Olson, for being on the Lotus Guide YouTube channel.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to talk to anybody that's giving an interest in bringing conscious kinds of media outlets to people. Because personally, I think that there's probably nothing more important right now than bringing good media content to people. Especially when you see most of the stuff that's on TV and radio and internet, you know.
Absolutely. We're trying to do on national television, I think, something that has perhaps been touched on only by Campbell and Moyers, and we're trying to do it with a much smaller budget, with a global focus. And so it's getting out there. It's getting out there through the series aired on Link TV before airing now on public television. It's streaming on the internet. We're trying to go for as much visibility as we can, and most of my life is spent writing proposals and trying to raise money to keep this series going, this
Right.
juggernaut going, and bringing more and diverse teachers to the series that really can benefit people's lives.
Yeah, what's your latest project, the One Through Love project? What's that about?
One Through Love is a project we're doing on Jalaluddin Rumi, the Persian poet,
Right.
and it's really what we call it a gathering of lovers. It's pulling together Rumi scholars, Sufi practitioners, different orders from around the world, Turkish, Iranian, Afghan, Western, and we're kind of looking at the core teaching of Rumi, which is love as the connecting force of all creation, and really I think helping at least people who are not familiar with mystical Islam to get some new insight that love as a spiritual practice is not just the domain of Christianity. While Jesus was a lover, there have been other great lovers in the world, and Rumi's certainly one of them, and his poetry is inspiring so many people in the West now. So we've decided to kind of take it into a website environment with live webcasts. That's called onethroughlove.org. One Through Love, THROUGH. We have a multilingual host, Parisa, who's putting it out there in Turkish, Farsi, Arabic, and English. So
This is Parisa Sultani.
Parisa Sultani, yes.
Yeah, I bet this isn't the field that Rumi was talking about beyond the wrongdoing and right doing, but it looks like we're meeting there anyway.
We are.
Yeah,
and there's a particular segment on the website that I want to recommend as far as technology and media. Sufi teacher named Llewellyn Van Lee talks about the internet as a tool of consciousness, and it's sort of emblematic of what we're trying to do, really use the oneness that is the internet to convey teachings of this kind that really bring people together and hopefully, move beyond mere tolerance to acceptance and love of the other, which is, of course, that if Jesus said anything in his life, it was that.
Right.
Anyway, that's what One Through Love is about.
It's really important too that the importance I see in people like you is like with Gurdjieff. I've read Gurdjieff for years and years and years, and he was totally into esoteric Sufism, and a lot of the body of his teachings came from that. But he was a terrible writer, and he depended on a person named Ouspensky, and Ouspensky is the one that really brought his teaching to light in a comprehensible way. Gurdjieff was one of those kinds of people. He could teach in person, but as far as getting it down in writing and bringing it to the media, he was terrible. So it's important to have people behind the scenes that can get this teaching and put it out there in such a way that it's comprehensible, because the people that we're really trying to reach aren't really there yet. And
Yeah.
they have a hard time understanding the esoteric language because it takes a level of consciousness, for the most part, to really grok that in a Heinleinian sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there are historical precedents for this. I just got back from Afghanistan. With Afghan poetry, it's often two different people. There's the poet, and then there's the person who recites the poetry.
Right.
And these are seen to be two totally different skill sets. He or she who is the poet is not considered necessarily at all to be the best person to read that poetry.
Right.
And here we are in the West thinking, we need to do everything. I mean, Global Spirit is a hosted television show. Phil Cousineau, my partner in this, is a great writer and a great interviewer. He's not a television producer, and so in a way we're doing something that's bigger than the sum of all of our parts. I'm doing my part by trying to keep production values high and try to make this an engaging conversation, visually, cinematically, emotionally, and so on. And Phil's doing what he does best, which is making people feel comfortable, being broad as well as deep. So I think something is really working, and I have faith that the series is going to be growing and finding larger and wider audiences.
Yeah, you're finding that balance. There's a saying that comes out of the Middle East: "Believe in Allah, but tie up your camel first." And
Yeah.
there are some nuts and bolts to this, because again, Gurdjieff. One of the things that Gurdjieff said is, no matter how spiritual you are, the rent comes once a month, and if we don't have people watching out for that level, it'll fall apart. I've seen really good intentions, people with the best of intentions, but they didn't have the marketing or the corporate kind of structure in place, and it falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know myself, my wife and I, we do the magazine, and when we started this, we started it out as a passion because she does healing and meditations, and we just knew that there was a place for this kind of media in Northern California, but we didn't have a clue of QuickBooks and accounting, and so we've really had to try to balance that out, and it's really, really important to do that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of things going on right now, Stephen. To get off the subject a little bit,
Yeah.
I was reading where at the collider, the super collider, they think they found the Higgs boson particle, and I was reading, because that's also called the God particle, which some scientists really hate. But if that is true, they have found the field. Again, we're in the field, and it's the field that they used to believe in, the ether field. You know what I mean? And what they're saying right now is something that I've touched on in the past. I sort of think that if we figure out gravity, and the Higgs boson particle is part of that, we're going to find out that gravity, if it has an emotional counterpart, would be love, because we feel attracted to each other. Love makes the world go around. I think we're getting close to figuring out the deeper, essential, emotional elements of what really holds this world together. And poets like Rumi have touched on it all through the ages. But now we're starting, science itself, as we increase our awareness and our consciousness, science is opening up to these deeper truths.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I mean, a lot of scientists are more comfortable with the term affinity, than love.
Right.
And as these theories are tested, they're convinced more than ever that it is this affinity factor that we call love. I mean, this opens up a whole other line of discourse, really, about what we mean by the word love in English and how it came to be understood as that. Because in Rumi's poetry and teachings, what they call ishq, or what in Turkish is called aşk, is a kind of divine love, a love of creation, a love of God and humanity and all of life. And as you know, Sufis get very some Sufi groups get very passionate about that. And how that came to the West through these traveling Central Asian troubadours and minstrels who have so much affected the European minstrels in this discourse, it became really kind of limited in its focus on romantic love. It includes romantic love, but in the Sufi sense, it's a much more all-encompassing love. And that force is easier to understand, by scientists as affinity or whatever kind of secular words they need to use to grapple with this. The relatedness and affinity of the universe, planetary attractions, all kinds of things. But anyway, it is really interesting stuff, and we hope to do a program more on the cosmos. And we've done a couple of programs on consciousness, exploring consciousness, East and West. That's a very important program in this regard. We've had Deepak Chopra on with Rianne Eisler, talking in depth about consciousness and as the unifying force of the universe. So it's a theme that keeps coming back into the natural discussion that takes place on these shows, because it is a program and a series that provokes questions, more so than giving answers. We're less interested in providing answers than asking those questions that take people's path further, or that give some articulation to a thought or a feeling that one's had, that, to hear Bob Thurman say it, or to hear Karen Armstrong say it, it just rings some bells with people and lets them, or reminds them, that they're part of a global community.
Yeah, I like the kind of information that when you're listening to it, it's engaging and it moves something. And at the end of it, if somebody asks you, what did they say? You don't even know exactly what they said, but it did something. It was a catalytic information in a sense. And I think what happens is that we're getting more and more information that's breaking down the boundaries of our personality, our ego definitions. And that's the beginning of breaking down national and religious definitions to where we can start seeing more, well, as I think it was Alan Watts that called this the leaky margins, the leaky margins of our personality. As those break down, we'll be able to be less confrontational, defensive, and likewise less offensive too. Yeah,
that's the hope. And we're also using film segments. I'm a filmmaker, and I do believe in the power of film to create a sense of an experience. And I'm hoping that our programs, in that they contain 2 or 3 film segments, actually take people on a little trip, a little experience of the topic of the program or the theme of the program, and that they get some direct sense of what forgiveness looks like or feels like, or what sacred music feels like, or the creative spirit,
Right.
So I do hope that's working. We're putting a lot of those out on the Huffington Post. I'm doing a weekly series to coincide with the broadcast, and we're taking special effort there to show